Okay, before getting into the demos, I'm going to talk quickly about some of the problems that are associated with poor site structure. Sites that have poor site structure, what sort of problems can we expect to see? Now, I'm sure given that most of you are already providing SEO services, you probably can relate to many of these, of which I'm about to touch on. Let's start with the most obvious one, inefficient crawling and indexing. This is where crawl rates become slow and inefficient if page paths are not easily accessible by bots. In other words, when bots hit the website, if the site structure is an absolute mess, crawls can get caught in loops, redirect chains, dead ends. I've actually seen instances and worked on campaigns where I've found that several pages are being crawled and indexed repeatedly whilst other areas of the website are being neglected. And this is exactly what I mean by poor crawl rates. You know, I'll be talking in a moment about clear pathways, but it's really, really important that when you go through the process of restructuring your site, you're mindful of this. You want to make sure that when bots hit the site, they can actually crawl and find pages easily. If, however, there are issues with crawl rates, this can lead on to my next point, which is indexation issues. And this is where pages are either not indexed at all, or timeframes in terms of indexation are slow. Okay, and now I'm sure at some point or another you've worked on a site where, hang on a minute, why won't this page index? We see these questions all the time. There are other issues that can cause this as well, but in a lot of cases, it's due to poor site structure. But in any case, if bots can't crawl the website effectively and find all of the pages on the website, then you're going to have issues with indexation. Okay, so you're going to end up in a situation where pages aren't being indexed at all, or they take forever in terms of being indexed. So that's both situations aren't good, and that brings me to my last point here, which is SERP performance. If pages are not being found, crawled, and indexed in a timely manner, this has a direct impact on campaign performance. Obviously, if we're making changes and improvements to pages, we want those changes to be picked up, crawled, and indexed as quickly as possible. Okay, we don't want to make a change on the client's site and be waiting 3 months for that page to be crawled and indexed. So we need to be mindful of this, and how a poor site structure can impact the efficiency around crawling and indexing. Okay, so what would poor crawl rates look like? If we were to use the following diagram to demonstrate, let's say, a site with a poor site structure, it might look something like this. Now, if you think about it, as bots come in to crawl the website, if your site structure is broken or dysfunctional like this, you'll find that quite often, as the bots come in, they might get caught up in redirect chains where the crawl budget is wasted, let's say. And in fact, I have seen this where you'll have several pages that are crawled more frequently than other sections of the website. And when this happens, you get yourself into a situation where a number of pages might be updated more frequently than, say, other areas of the site where pages might be crawled less frequently or even not crawled at all. That, of course, causes problems, especially if you've got orphan pages. So let's say we had another page down here that wasn't actually linked to anything at all. Of course, all of these things are problematic, because what we want, instead of the crawlers coming in and bouncing around and getting lost and not finding pages and so forth, what we want is something that looks more like this, so that crawlers can crawl the site effectively and ideally crawl the entire site index, or if not the entire site index, but the majority of it, without wasting crawl budget. In other words, it might look more like this. So crawlers come in, whether it be they enter through the home page or another area of the website, and they can simply navigate their way through the site without any sort of issues. And this is essentially what we want, right? We want crawlers and bots to be able to find their way through the entire website, because we want, like I said, if we're updating pages, we want those improvements or those updates to be crawled and indexed as quickly as possible. So this is really what we're aiming for. We want nice clean pathways between pages, and with a clean site structure that looks more like this, as opposed to something that looks like this, we'll be able to achieve that. My next point here is wasted or lost link equity. So there's a couple of things here that I want to touch on. We'll talk about link equity first, and then I'll get into off-page. But let's start with wasted link equity. So this is where link equity is either wasted or becomes diluted due to too many pages, incorrect categorization and structure. So what do I mean by that? Well, if the site is an absolute mess, and let's say it's over-optimized, and you have 3 category pages or parent category pages, let's say, and each of those contain, a subcategory of 20 pages each, and you're driving links, you might be thinking to yourself, well, hang on a minute, where do we drive links to? Which one of these 3 category pages should we link to? Should we link it just to this one? But what about these other 2? Maybe we should link to all 3. And then, of course, you get into a situation where maybe we're driving more links than what's actually required. I'll touch more on that in just a minute. But if the site structure is a mess, like a real mess, then the link equity that you're driving is going to be wasted, because maybe you're driving it to too many different pages or categories, or it becomes diluted because instead of just having, fewer pages and more potency, and that link equity is being used effectively, you're just going to be sort of, trying to fill up 50 glasses with one small bottle of champagne, as opposed to filling up 2 glasses. That's an analogy sometimes that I like to use just to help students understand, the way in which link equity is passed between pages, okay? And this is something I'm definitely going to talk about more in just a minute, okay? You want, at the site core at least, you want fewer pages, more potency, okay? Because it's going to require fewer links in order to drive those pages up. Again, I'll talk more about that in a minute. But wasted link equity or diluted link equity is not good in any case. My next point here is link equity is lost. This is where link equity is lost entirely due to dead ends, often pages, 404s, or redirect chains. Okay, and I'm sure if you've been working on a campaign at one point or another, and you've audited the link profile, well, hang on a minute, there are all of these links pointing to pages that don't even exist, or there are links pointing to pages that don't link anywhere else. This is not good, because let's face it, getting links and everything else can be challenging. So wasted link equity or lost link equity, neither of those situations are ideal. And this, of course, rounds out to my last point here around ineffective off-page. So both of these issues combined, this results in ineffective off-page, which can often mean inbound links become less effective, or the required amount of links increases, okay? Neither of which are an ideal situation. Let's face it, link building is hard enough. It takes time, the resources, the time, the costs, sometimes getting links can be expensive. So we want to try and reduce the number of links and give them, have them have a greater impact. And this, of course, can be done through ensuring that we clean up site structure before we start the actual off-page process. Okay, so I think the best way for me to visually demonstrate how link equity is passed between pages and how that link equity is potentially lost or wasted when you're working with a site like this that has a broken or dysfunctional site structure is to think about the way in which, maybe we're filling up buckets, let's say. So stick with me here. This is going to be a little bit unusual and perhaps something you haven't seen before, but this is the way in which I like to think about it, right? Because this is probably the most easiest way to explain it. So let's say, for example's sake, that we're going to we've published a guest post somewhere, and let's say just for shits and giggles that the link equity, we have this much link equity on the page. Now, if we want to break it down into SEO terms, maybe the domain authority or whatever you want to call it has, we've got 35. It's coming from a site with domain authority 35, or there's that much link equity from the actual page itself. It really should be about the page, not the domain. In any case, let's say that it's got that much link equity and we're pushing it to this category here. Okay. Now, if all things being equal, we push that much link equity to the page, maybe we might get a little bit less than what actually transfers to that category page. Now, of course, this link equity, as we know, is going to be passed to adjoining pages. How far that link equity is passed throughout the entire site is really anyone's guess. But I would assume that the link equity probably diminishes as it moves between pages, to the point where, okay, well, maybe if we're pushing if we're pushing this much link equity from this page here and we're pushing it to this category, we might start with that much, and then slowly but surely, as it moves between pages, that link equity drops off. Now, in terms of how link equity is potentially lost between pages, if we have a broken site structure that looks like this, well, then as you can see, the link equity that we're pushing through to this category page might be channeled through to several different pages just because of the way in which the site is structured. It doesn't really make a great deal of sense. So this would indicate to us that if we're dealing with this much link equity and we hit this page here, then we're essentially trying to fill up maybe several buckets, right? We're potentially maybe trying to fill up several buckets with this amount of link equity. Now, if you think about, if we had a jug of water and we had, 30 buckets to fill up, we can only put so much water in each of those buckets because that's how much water we have, right? Now, if we had, on the other hand, if we had a site structure that looked like this, let's say, and we had the same page, the same amount of link equity, okay, 35 or whatever that might be, and we push to this page here, because we're not branching out and linking to pages all over the place because we've got a nice clean site structure, that link equity would be passed only to the pages of which we want it to, because we've put thought into the way in which we've structured the website, right? So the link equity wouldn't become diluted. That's what I mean by diluting, or link equity becoming diluted. This means that we're not wasting that water. We're not trying to have to distribute, the short amount or the small amount of water that we might have across 50 odd buckets. In this case, we've only got to distribute that water across 3 or 4. Now, obviously the page path, levels and the depth of clicks and everything else need to be taken into account. And there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, and it's never going to be this simplistic. The only reason I'm explaining it to you this way is so that you can understand how link equity is passed between pages, right? We know this to be fairly accurate because we don't just push one link to a website and all of the pages start moving up, okay? This is why it takes time and effort to get links, because we've got to be driving links all over the place, right? We've got to be pushing links to category pages, to the home page, to products and service pages and everything else, so that slowly but surely everything moves up, okay? But if we have a dysfunctional or broken site structure like this, then the link equity could end up anywhere. And worst case scenario, the link equity is going to be lost. Okay, link equity being diluted is bad, but losing the link equity completely is even worse. Now that can happen through, dead ends, redirect chains, or orphan pages. So if we had, let's say, an orphan page that was floating around out here, and we picked up another page that had the same amount of link equity as this one, and we pushed it to this page here, well then all of that link equity would go to that one page, but it wouldn't be passed to any other page because it's an orphan page. Now this doesn't happen very often, and hopefully if you're providing quality services it doesn't happen at all. But this is what I mean by lost link equity. And it's not good because all of these problems, whether you've lost link equity or the link equity is becoming wasted or diluted, means that you've just got to get more links. And I don't know about you, but link building is hard and it can be time consuming and it can take enormous amount of resources and it can be expensive. So you should be working towards ensuring that the link equity that you're driving to the website is not being wasted and you're making the most of it, because you don't want to have to drive 1,200 links to a site in order to make it work. You want to have a nice clean site structure that looks more like this, where you need fewer links. But hopefully this helps you understand what I mean by the way in which link equity is passed between pages. And like I said, this leads into my next point here around chaotic off-page optimization. My first point here, messy off-pages, is uncertainty and confusion around where to point links when destination pages are unclear. I had someone in the group ask me recently, well, hang on a minute, John, we're driving links. Where do we need to drive these links to? The site in that case was an absolute mess, and I said, well, you really probably should start by cleaning up the site structure first and getting more clarity and certainty around where those links need to actually go. If the site is an over-optimized mess and you've got pages and categories all over the place, then the likelihood of getting it wrong or having some uncertainty around where to drive links is going to be much greater. So cleaning up site structure can definitely help solve that problem. And of course, excessive work. If we're having to do more work, the workload is increased due to having to potentially acquire more links, but also push more links at more pages and in what's actually necessary. And we don't want to do that. Okay, this means more time, more money. Clients are going to start getting cranky. We don't want to do that. We want to always, the rule should always be, number one rule, when it comes to an SEO campaign and in business in general, I've found you want to work towards less. Okay, less. And a great saying that I like to share in the group is fewer pages, more potency. Okay, so we don't want to increase the workload. We don't want to buy more links. We don't want to create more pages than what is necessary. And we want to have more certainty and confidence around our off-page efforts. Okay, the type of links we're getting, and more importantly, where we're driving those links to, and the impact of what impact those links are actually going to have. We don't want to just be blasting links all over the place because we've got pages and posts and categories here, there, and everywhere. And this, of course, rounds out to my last point here: less effective, potentially pushing links at wrong entry points with a greater margin of error. Okay, we don't want to do that because there's too much waste, and all of that extra time, money, cost, and everything else is just going to eat into our profit margins. And of course, it means the results that we see are going to take far longer. Okay, so when we're driving links, like I said, we want to work with absolute efficiency so that we require fewer links in order to get the best possible outcome for our clients as quickly as possible. And this is why having a clean site structure will help us achieve that. To demonstrate, let's say, for example's sake, that we're wanting to promote a product for our client and they're wanting to sell more red widgets. Okay, now let's just say in this example, using this example, that this main category page is for widgets. Okay, and this subcategory page is for red widgets. Okay, now because we've got a nice clean structure, we know exactly where to drive links if we're wanting to promote this page here. Okay, we've spoken with the client and they've said to us, okay, John, we want to sell more red widgets. Brilliant. Okay, so we're going to do some additional work. We're going to clean up the site structure. We're going to map it out in a way that makes sense. And we're going to create a dedicated page within this nice clean site structure for red widgets. So our off-page efforts and link building and all of that other good stuff that we do, that's going to be really easy because it's obvious. We're going to be getting links from other sites, guest posts and whatever else, and we're going to be driving all of those links to our red widgets category or page or whatever that might be, because it's obvious, right? That's where it lives. And then of course we might have men's red widgets and women's red widgets that hang off those pages, or different sizes or styles or whatever the case might be, and that link equity will be channeled through to the most appropriate pages. As you can see, it's clean, it's nice, and it's easy. However, if our site structure looks like this and we're driving links, okay, well, we've got our category page here for widgets, but we've also got a category page over here for widgets, and this one is for affordable widgets. That links to maybe red widgets over here, but we've also got a page over here that we found. We did some keyword research and we found a close variation that the client wanted to rank for, and maybe we've got widgets red because we're trying to rank for a different term over here, and maybe we've just got a category over here which is for red. I don't know. So as you can see already, it's getting really confusing. And I see this all the time. And this is essentially where this is a case of over-optimization. And this is SEO consultants are notorious for this. They'll just do keyword research, find some keywords, jam some pages in without any thought around where those pages should live. So this then leaves us in a position, okay, if we were to do the same thing again and get some links from other sites and guest posts, wait a minute, where do we link these to? Because we've got several pages here. We've got this one for red widgets. We've got this one which is for widgets that are red. This one is for reddish widgets, and this one is just red. And this is a category page for widgets. Do we link them here, or should we link them to this one over here? Oh, maybe we just link to all of them. Okay, so you can already see the problem that we have because our site structure is an absolute mess. It becomes really confusing, and it leaves the door wide open in terms of doing more work than we need to, because of course if we're trying to push link equity to all of these pages, we're going to need more links, which means it's going to take longer, which means it's going to be slower. The client's going to get upset. It's going to take more budget. We're going to have to create more content to put on all of these pages, not to mention, if we're creating guest posts and everything else, the problems just compound on top of each other. So, and not to mention the fact that it gets really confusing in terms of where are we actually driving links to? So, and this is where, if you go far enough with this is where, maybe the wrong page starts ranking or this page over here starts performing where it really shouldn't, because this is our main page over here. And this all leads to, keyword cannibalization, all that other stuff. So it's tremendously important that you understand, again, the importance of having a nice clean site structure, because as you can see visually, the difference is night and day. There won't be any confusion about where to drive links. There'll be much less work to do. And you'll definitely get results a lot faster because we can channel all of our link equity only where it needs to go. Now, much like our chaotic off page, I've intentionally used the same header here, chaotic on page. And you'll see, right, there's a pattern. You'll soon see there's a pattern between all of the things and the tasks that we perform as part of an SEO campaign and how they are all so dependent upon the framework of the site. And this is why I say, like, site structure and site restructuring is so important. It's such an integral part of an effective SEO campaign. Now, in terms of on-page, a problem associated with poor site structure in terms of on-page, keyword stuffed URLs. Okay, this is without question. I see this all the time. Keyword stuffed URLs, which often results in long, difficult to understand page names. For whatever reason, almost everyone that works in the SEO space has this habit of wanting to keyword stuff the shit out of their URLs. Okay, and you'll see this all over the place. Let's say you're working with, I don't know, a roofing company. You might have something like domain.com/roofing/ affordable roofing Sydney / Sydney roofing / cheap roofing Sydney. It doesn't make any sense. And that outcome is not only a problem in itself, but that outcome ties in closely with site structure. Because when you're just jamming more and more keywords in there and trying to rank for more individual terms or more keywords individually like that, it just causes site bloat, right? Which is my next point here. Not to mention the fact that, no one can make any sense of the page names and what the categorization and how those sections of the website should be organized. But without question, this is my next point here, site bloat. This is where too many pages and categories are created in an effort to rank for every possible keyword and phrase. I touched on this just before where I said, okay, we've got 5 keywords, or maybe we've done some keyword research and we've got 10 keywords. These keywords are relevant to what the client is trying to do. Let's create some content. Okay, we've got 10 pages now. Where on earth do we put them? Okay, we'll just jam them in here. This is without question over-optimization and keyword-stuffed URLs and jamming pages in ad hoc in an effort to try and rank for individual terms is without question something that causes problems or can lead to poor site structure, and that of course has a flow-on effect. And of course, excessive work. So if we're doing all of this additional work, it's just going to lead to increased workload due to too many pages, categories, right? And this is, this ties in with exactly what I just mentioned. Okay, so over-optimization, site bloat, keyword-stuffed URLs. This is without question one of the main reasons why we often end up in situations like this. Now, I'm not quite sure where to start here, but let's start at the beginning, I guess. So let's say, just for example's sake, that we start with a nice clean we start with a nice clean site, and the site structure isn't actually too bad. Now, like I mentioned just a minute ago, a common habit or mistake that a lot of SEO consultants do is that they disregard site structure completely and they go straight to keyword research. Okay, and you'll see, I'm sure you've done a lot of courses and maybe you've watched a lot of videos on YouTube. They always say, first thing you need to do is keyword research. Okay, so what happens when we disregard site structure and we jump straight to keyword research? Well, this is what happens. We end up with a list of keywords of interest. Okay, so maybe we've had a conversation with the client and the client said, hey, we want to sell red widgets, right? We want to sell red widgets, and we perform keyword research and we end up with a list of, let's say, 30 keywords, right? We've got our keywords here, and what do we do? Okay, well, maybe we, in order to rank for each of these keywords, we create a page for each one, right? So you then in order to perform the next steps, you go to your content team, you say, guys, okay, we found these keywords, we need to create content. The content team go away and they come back to you and they say, okay, John, we've created content as per instructions. Here's 30 pages for each of these keywords. Now, the first thing you do is say, well, okay, well, where should these pages live? And again, let's say, just for example's sake, and this would be pretty rare, you have a clean website that looks like this. Well, then you start looking at it and thinking, okay, well, where do we put these pages? And in a lot of cases, they just get jammed in anywhere that kind of fits. So, okay, well, maybe this keyword here, this is for jeans. Let's say it's a clothing e-commerce site. This is, we've done some keyword research here for jeans, and we've got affordable men's jeans. So we'll create a page for that, and maybe that will just hang off jeans. But then we've got denim jeans underneath here, and maybe we found a keyword here which was stretched denim jeans. Okay, so we'll hang another page off there because that's stretched denim jeans. And we've got another one here which is, this one is stonewashed jeans. So we'll just put that up there. And maybe we've got some more keywords here. This one is for, I don't know, pink denim jeans. And oh, hang on a minute, we've got some other keywords that we did here, and this doesn't really fit this page here. So what we'll do is we'll add that page over here, and this will be for women's, I don't know, women's corduroy jeans, let's say. I don't know if I'm going to spell this right, but let's go with me. Women's corduroy jeans. So we put that page there. And then there's another couple of keywords that we found that maybe this keyword probably makes sense to go here, this page rather, because that is really a page that has more to do with this page here. So we'll put that page there. And if this continues on long enough, eventually you end up in a situation where you started with something that, actually wasn't too bad. And as you've done more and more keyword research, in order to try and rank for individual terms, you've taken something that looked like this initially, and before you know it, you've got something that looks like this. And this happens because of that terrible habit that most SEO consultants have. They neglect site structure completely. They go and do keyword research. They find a shitload of keywords. They go to their content team and they say, okay, we've got 50 keywords here. Create 50 pages of content. And then they go through that exercise that I just touched on there. And this is where they end up jamming pages and categories in all over the place. That leads to complete over-optimization. And if it continues on long enough, you end up in a situation where you have site bloat. Okay, so if you were to think about how messy and complicated this would potentially get if we continued on long enough, we would have categories and pages hanging off just about absolutely everywhere, and we would end up with such site bloat that this would take us full circle back into a number of the things I've already covered with poor indexation and having to do more work than what is necessary. And all of those other problems that I've just touched on. Now, probably the most important or the worst part of this problem is that when you go down this road and you start doing keyword research and try to rank for, you're finding keywords of interest, you're building out pages for one keyword at a time, you then get yourself into a situation where you end up with keyword stuffed URLs. So using this example here, and I'm just doing this off the top of my head, let's say you've got domain.com/jeans, right? This is a category that we had up here, so let's say, and then we've got denim, because that makes sense. We'll put that under jeans, but then we have women's, and then we have affordable affordable women's jeans. And it might end up looking something like this, right? So as you can see already, this is getting pretty mental. And then maybe if we repeat this process again, we might end up with a close variation, but we have to change it because we're trying to cater for maybe for a different keyword, right? And this time it is cheap women's jeans, right? So this is starting to become ridiculous. And in fact, these examples that I'm showing you here aren't even as bad as what I normally see. In fact, probably the biggest culprit is for local SEO for trades, where you might have something that looks like this: domain.com /roofing /Sydney Sydney roofing best Sydney roofers. Okay, I'm actually running out of room here, but this demonstrates my point perfectly. Best Sydney roofers. So as you can see, because we're just doing keyword research at random and we haven't put any thought into our site structure, and we're just trying to figure out where to plug these pages in like this, and we're just jamming them in all over the place where we think they kind of fit, we end up with URLs that look like this. This is terrible SEO. This goes beyond lazy SEO. This is just, let's throw absolutely everything at this site and hope that something sticks. Okay, and this is without question, like I said, this is probably one of the worst habits that most SEO consultants have. I've even seen large-scale agencies get this wrong, and you'll end up with URLs that are just ridiculously long, and they're keyword stuff. This doesn't make any sense to have roofing, Sydney roofing, Sydney roofing, roofers, over and over and over in the URLs. And this is a direct result, like I said, of not thinking ahead in terms of site structure and knowing exactly where pages need to be categorized. Okay, this is sort of a follow-on from my previous point, content-related issues, and this can lead to a lack of clarity around page purpose, resulting in uncertainty around what information to actually provide or cover within certain pages. And like I said just a minute ago, if you're doing keyword research and let's say you've got two categories, one is for blue widgets and you've got another category that hosts a number of pages, best blue widgets, you're going to be looking and thinking, well, these categories or maybe even these two pages are very, very similar. What do we do? Okay, so do we create content for blue widgets and then maybe just add a few words and put the same content on this other page here that reads best blue widgets because there's some search volume around these terms, and well, wouldn't it make sense to do that? That becomes a problem because you end up, like I said, a lack of clarity around page purpose, resulting in uncertainty around what information to actually provide and cover. And this leads into my next point here around near duplicate content. Okay, and you'll see this absolutely everywhere, especially with low-end SEO service providers. And this is a result of site bloat, which results in more pages being created than what is necessary. Okay, and if it gets bad enough, it becomes thin, near duplicate content. And then, of course, keyword cannibalization. This is where numerous pages end up competing for the same or similar terms. And this is a direct flow-on from a previous point, near duplicate content. Okay, well, hang on a minute. We created a page that was red widgets, and we've also got a page here which is best red widgets. Best red widgets is actually ranking for the wrong keyword, and I've seen these conversations all around, right? Oh, the wrong page is ranking. Well, firstly, you should be glad that anything's ranking at all. But secondly, you're in this position because there's no clarity around page purpose. The pages and the content that you're creating are too similar. And this is because you haven't stopped to think about site structure. Okay, so keyword cannibalization, that can certainly be a problem associated with a lack of planning around site structure. Okay, so how can our content efforts be impacted by a poor site structure? So as mentioned just a minute ago, where I spoke about performing keyword research, finding keywords of interest, taking those keywords, instructing your content team to create content for each of those terms in an effort to try and rank for individual terms, that can lead into huge problems in terms of content. So to demonstrate what this might look like visually, let's use the following example. So let's say that we have the following 3 pages on our website. 1, 2, 3. These could be product pages, service pages, category pages, it doesn't matter. And we're in a situation where, okay, we've done keyword research, we're trying to rank or help the client rank for red widgets, again, let's say, and we've done some keyword research, and we've got 3 terms that are very closely related. We've got, let's say, I don't know, red widgets. We've got reddish widgets, and I'm just using this as an example to help you understand my point. Reddish widgets. And we've also got widgets that are red. Okay. Now, what do we do? Okay, well, we've got 3 keywords here. We instruct our content team, well, all right, guys, we want to try and rank for each of these terms. We can see there's search volume there. This is definitely a product or a service that our client wants to rank for. So we instruct our content team, all right, guys, we want you to create 3 pages. 1 for red widgets, another one for reddish widgets, and another one for widgets that are red. Okay, great. So the first challenge comes about with, all right, so, this content is very, very similar. What do we do? Okay, well, I can tell you what most SEO agents do or consultants do. They'll write one piece of content and then they'll simply spin that and they'll rewrite it using software or maybe something like ChatGPT, and they'll essentially just publish the same content over, right? Now, I'm sure you're well aware of this, and let's face it, there's plenty of shit SEO agencies out there that do this in order to cut corners and lower expenses and fast track the process and everything else. But this causes a huge problem because we now have 3 pages. We now have 3 pages that we're going to publish on site that are all near identical content, right? Now, a common practice that a lot of SEO agencies will do is that, maybe they're using an article spinner, maybe they're using ChatGPT, or maybe they've got their content team on this, and all they're doing really is just they're using the same content, but they're just changing a couple of words here and there, right? And making the content maybe 5 or 10% different. Instead of it saying red widgets, they'll use the same piece of content here and they'll change it to reddish widgets. Now, I'm sure, I've looked at a lot of sites over the years and I can see this happening, and you'll look at, you can bring up 4 or 5 pieces or pages rather on screen, and you can look and say, this content's the same. In fact, in a lot of cases, the content is identical and they don't even bother to change it. So this causes problems internally with, this leads to site bloat, disorganization of pages, a terrible site structure, but also it can drive your content team mad, like I said just a second ago, because they'll be thinking, all right, because if this gets bad enough, you might have 30 pages where you provide these instructions. Guys, we want 30 pages all published for red widgets. And your content team will be thinking, oh my God, well, how many times can we write about the same thing over and over and over again? So that causes a problem in itself. But the biggest problem, the main problem, is keyword cannibalization, right? Well, it can get worse than that, but it's probably a starting point that's worth mentioning. Keyword cannibalization, where, hang on a minute, if you go to Google and you type in red widgets, this page here is ranking. Oh, okay, well, that's not kind of what we wanted. We were hoping this page here would rank, but this page is ranking. Well, hang on a minute, we checked it a month later, and now this page is ranking. Wonder why? Or hang on a minute, we check it 2 months later, and now the correct page is ranking. Okay, great. Well, wait a minute, 2 weeks later, this page is now ranking. And you'll have, or even in some cases, you'll have 2 or maybe 3 of those pages all competing. One, they're dropping in and out, or they're both competing for the same term. That can be really annoying, because if the content, let's say, doesn't satisfy what the search intent and what the user is actually looking for, that can lead to poor user experience, high bounce rates, and all sorts of problems which can impact the site performance overall. But in addition to keyword cannibalization, you're also going to probably experience situations where pages are just completely de-indexed completely. And Google's getting better at this. And in fact, especially with the most recent update, helpful content update, a lot of sites are tanking or having a large percentage of pages removed from the index because of this very reason. Because there's just too many pages that provide little to no value, because the content is it's thin content and it's near duplicate. It's either duplicate content or it's near duplicate. Okay, poor campaign performance overall. All of these things combined can lead to all sorts of problems, as I've covered. Fewer conversions, lower conversion rates due to navigational complexity, resulting in poor UX. Look, if someone lands on a site and they're clicking around in circles, or they're having to navigate, 6 or 7 clicks deep, that's a problem. And that's going to have a flow-on effect in terms of the actual desired outcome that the client is trying to achieve, whether it's more bookings, customer inquiries, phone calls, purchases, whatever that might be. We can be doing the world's greatest SEO, but if the site structure is a mess and the navigation is a nightmare to try and manage or figure out, that's not great. And don't forget, we're not focusing on rankings here, guys. We're focusing on revenue. So we're going to be focusing on the metrics that actually matter, and that is conversion rates. Okay, we want to be having those conversations with our clients. Conversion rate optimization matters. User experience matters. Okay, so we can't neglect these things. We can't be just thinking, okay, well, it doesn't matter. We're just going to rank first page and hope for the best. The next point here that I've got here is site management, and this is increased complexity and confusion in terms of general site management, okay, as well as increased support post-handover. I touched on this just a minute ago. If you're just jamming pages and there's no forethought or planning put in towards site structure, to the point where you can hand it over, and this is where you want to be. You want to be able to hand it over to a client and they can look and go, oh, okay, here's a section for red widgets. Here's a section for blue widgets. Here's a section for green widgets. And if they want to create a page or update a page or remove a page, they know exactly where to go. That's where you want to be. Not, oh my God, this thing's an absolute nightmare. Like this is an absolute mess. We don't know what's going on and where pages live or how to update this page. We need to get back in touch with those that digital marketing agency and get them to help us. And of course, complexity everywhere. Okay, increased complexity and confusion in terms of campaign management. Okay, resulting in potential for more problems. If you're just jamming in pages here, there, and everywhere, driving links all over the place, creating content ad hoc to satisfy, individual terms, I can tell you right now that your team is going to lose their mind. Ideally, what you want to do is not only do you want to niche down and specialize and implement, work with the same content management system, but more importantly, you want to productize your service offering and get to the point where you can implement repeatable processes and potentially have the site structure mapped out straight out of the box. I'll be talking, if you haven't done it already, be talking in one of the other modules about using pre-built niche-specific pre-built templates where the site structure is already built straight out of the box. So you don't have to go through this process of, mapping out or fixing site structure for every single campaign that you work on. Okay, next, of course, higher costs, low profits. If you're dealing with all of these problems that I've just touched on, you're going to have greater workload. You're going to have a greater workload for every single campaign that you work on, simply because there's just no structure around anything that you're doing. This, of course, the end result is an over allocation of time and resources, which creates unnecessary workloads, more links, more content, more on page, more staffing. Everything takes twice as long. And this, of course, has a flow-on effect in terms of costs, operational costs, and having to perform more work than what's actually required means higher costs and lower profits. Okay, so as you can see, guys, just overall, it just makes everything harder. So taking the time to map out a well thought out site structure to begin with at the very beginning of your SEO campaigns, and even, taking it further and using pre-built templates where you've got that site structure ready to go straight out of the box can make everything so much easier.